Welcome back to Rise to Liberty podcast. Today I am joined once again by John Kerwin of Wake Up or Else, also the author of The Conspiracy Theorist Survival Guide. How are you doing today, John?
Good, Jacob. Good to be back with you, my friend.
For sure. So we'll just jump straight into it. I don't like formalities, but real quick, I do want to just drop the video sponsor just because they have the absolute balls to sponsor this show.
They do.
So, Nadeau Shave Company. It's absolutely the best razor you're going to find out there. It's a veteran-owned, family-operated company. Like I said, they have the balls to sponsor this show. So go ahead and go pick yourself up a single blade safety razor. There was a reason why your dads and grandfathers used to use nothing but this all the time. Now we have nothing but plastic, China-made crap that gets sold to us, creates ingrown hairs and all kinds of skin blemishes. It's not good for you. The days of big shave are over at NadeauShaveco.com, or let's see, NadeauShaveco.com. Rise 15 at checkout for 15% off your order. Nadeau Shave Co., where tradition beats modernity. Okay. Those guys are great. Absolutely love it. You know, I always said I was never going to basically push a product or a service that I don't use, and highly recommend it. And it's something overlooked. You know, you go to the store and you're like, oh, I need razors, and it's so easy to just buy that Chinese plastic with multiple razors, and my skin never took to it, you know?
So what happens when Stevie Wonder tries to shave himself?
I don't know.
Stevie Nicks.
That's a good one. I like that.
Little shaving humor there to get the party going. What's up, truthers? I'm talking to truthers. Plus, this is Rise to Liberty. You guys are really in my wheelhouse. Being state national and bucking the system. Oh, baby. We could go there.
We've got Brandon Joe Williams coming back on here soon. So make sure and keep an eye out for that, everybody. That's going to be absolutely incredible. Whole show is going to be nothing but state national stuff. So
yeah, let me put a plug in for a paid subscription that I have. It's called the American Study Guide, $40 a month. They got about 5 full-time people, all the courses. Most importantly, what about this? What about that? There's Ask Me Anything, weekly trainings. Without that, I wouldn't try and journey this. I've been studying the legal education movement for about 6 years now, repudiated my 14th Amendment status, but then we're studying now reclaiming our securities, which everything is about trust law. This is, I believe, the guys figured this out finally, because so many things we've done haven't worked, honestly, because we've been trying to correct or change the system. Going in at the trust law level where you reclaim the security, you make yourself the beneficiary, kind of leapfrogs over all of the tactics. I'm here by special appearance, blah, blah, blah. Well, ultimately, if you are the beneficiary, then they can't get any of the money. So all of it falls to the wayside because they can't get any of the money out of the estate. And then you win. So in the legal education movement, some things work, some things are true, but they don't work. Then other things are true and they do work, but they can get you into trouble. And then some things are true, but they work only sometimes. I mean, all of us that have been doing this have tried stuff, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating. And you can't know because you got people that are gurus who have been doing it for decades and they're still banging their head against the wall. So it's really a journey.
I always thought it was interesting. So you pull up any sort of stories from history as far as slavery goes, and the master would always keep some sort of information hidden
That's for sure.
And there was a time when the only people that could read within a village, a community, would have been the head of the church. And it's like, obviously that's going to create some problems, but I think we're in the same type of situation where the slaves are not taught the language, and the language is legalese. It's all this language that you mostly have to go to school for. Well, you don't have to go to school for it, but you do have to study it. It's not a natural thing that it's not innate.
Yeah.
And that's how they're able to basically enslave us, is through all of that, and put us into indentured servitude for the rest of our lives unless we do something about it.
Yep. And I'm not sure how things are going to play out, because back in 2007 they started going away from anything constitutional, any compliance with the Constitution. So I don't know, like if you're in North Korea, I don't think there's any strategies that you can implement.
Yeah.
So it depends. We have a window of time to push back the timetable. I mean, I come from a biblical worldview. I make no apologies. I'm a born again Christian. If you shake your fist at God, let me hold the door for you. I get it. I get all the questions. I get it. But Jesus is the only one with the words of eternal life. So I'm going to put all of my questions aside and go with it. Anyway, the fight is, according to the biblical worldview, a losing one. It doesn't get any better and better, and we don't go into some utopia until all of hell breaks loose. So I don't really understand sort of how I'm supposed to play this out, except that I'm not supposed to be a spectator, and I'm not supposed to pull the covers over my head and go, "Oh, Lord Jesus, come quickly." We're supposed to be warriors like Worf in Star Trek. Today is a good day to die. That's Christianity, okay? Christianity is an ass-kicking ceremony. It says, "For this purpose the Son of Man was manifested, that he would destroy the works of the enemy." That's what it tells us about Jesus. He was an ass kicker. He came to kick the devil's ass. And then it says, "As he was in the world, so are we." So let's get on with it. That's why so many people are fed up with church, because it's a social scene, especially now. Every church has like a Starbucks in the lobby, and then people saunter in at 10 minutes after with their torn jeans and their cup warmer, and they sit there for the program. I went to church with my family, who my wife divorced me because I'm a truther. My kids barely talk to me, but I still was kind of with them after all that. And we went to this church, and I am telling you what, it was a spectacle. They had the smoke machines cranking. It was like a rock concert, nightclub environment. Everything's black, laser lights. I couldn't believe it, man. I'm like, where the heck am I? And then the guy comes out, the preacher man, he saunters out, and he's all mod and cool and handsome and slick and trendy. Cool, cracking jokes, just making God like a frivolity, and then, but the whole time he's speaking, the smoke machines are cranking in the background. I'm thinking, what the heck message is this sending to people?
Yeah,
What do you need the
that's
smoke
odd.
machine? It was really weird, man.
Yeah,
Skinny jeans.
I've always been curious about the mega churches that they
Yeah.
have down in Texas. They are as large as stadiums, and then
Yep.
the preachers come in on a private jet, and
Yep.
something about all of that just doesn't seem correct.
No, it doesn't. You figure, well, the real Christianity, please stand up. What does it look like to be a Christian in 2024? Well, I mean, there's all different kinds of walks. I remember this one lady, she ran a prayer retreat up on top of a mountain, this Korean lady. I went there for a prayer getaway, fast and pray. And this lady, all she did was pray. So she didn't do anything in the eyes of the world except sit in a room, it just seems dumb. but not to God. But then for the most part, we're supposed to try to save children. Like Peter said, true and undefiled religion is this: keep yourself unspotted from the world and then help the fatherless and the widows. So there's a spiritual part. You got to get rid of your sin because God's holy, and then you got to help people. It's kind of like sums it up. Do something. So that's what we're doing here today.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we're here. Freeing minds.
So, I am curious. Obviously, there seems to be a big push against Christianity, or really just any faith.
You think?
Yeah. So, do you see things as? Do you see a big group of people rushing back to the faith?
Oh yeah, the more the blood of the saints is the seed of the church. So the more they persecute Christians, the more people will see that they want what the Christians have. Because when you die well, that's strong evidence that what you believe is true. That's what happened in the Roman Empire, is that the Christians were dying in a way that the people started jumping over the fences saying, I want to die with them. That was very common. And then they would also go in and when they got the bodies out, they were all smiling. The bodies were smiling. The dead bodies were, frozen with a smile on their face. And they're like, whoa. So the proof's in the pudding, bro. You may be really ticked off at God right now. You don't dig God at all. Like maybe when you were 8, your mom or dad was dying of cancer, and you little innocent boy or girl, and you prayed, "Oh God, if you're real, please heal my mommy," and mommy dies. And so from that point on, you shook your fist at God. I get it, okay? I could sit here for the next 2 hours and tell you why that's not God's fault. And God is still good and all that. But it's not going to help you. You're going to have to meet him to know he's good, and then basically reconcile all that stuff into a box that I call my peanut brain. Okay? You're never going to have the capacity to understand all the mysteries of the universe in time to make your decision. So you have to have one good despair, get it over with, and then meet this God and realize he's not actually Moloch. He just allows free will, and people choose evil, and it makes this world a hellhole. And it's not really about your form, it's about your essence. It's about your spirit life, which is detached from this world. So all of the things that come to mess with you aren't what defines you anymore. And so you float through this life, you float through detached, basically the answer is there is no answer this side of eternity. Which is not comforting. It's not comforting to the natural mind. The natural mind wants to control, because then you feel like you're in control, then you're safe. But it's just a messed up world, man, and you got to decide. And my thing was, Jesus is the only one that's offering me the words of eternal life. Buddha, Hare Krishna, Muhammad, atheism, they got nothing I want. Because ultimately, you do draw your last breath. Let's be honest. And you could believe there's no afterlife, but I don't. Most people don't. There's no afterlife. So the only one, the only religion to me that has the props on what happens after is Christianity. So I have to, my prayer every day is, God, I accept your terms. However you run your universe, it's not probably how I would run the universe. Let's just say that. But I'm not the guy running the universe, so I'm going to humble myself. And I'm going to chalk up all of my questions to my limited intellectual capacity. Because a lot of atheists are really intellectual. They're very smart. A lot of people have really good reasoning. And I believe that's part of the reason God set it up this way, is to humble you. There's a very high wall that you have to scale to get into heaven, or to get into restored to the Father is a better way to put it. And you can't do it in your intellect. You have to come as a little child. Sort of like when somebody's diagnosed as cancerous and you have like 3 weeks to live. It humbles you, man. When you realize you're about to pass into eternity, all of your arrogance just goes out of you like a balloon. And all of your priorities shift. Boom. And all of a sudden, your ideals shift. Boom. You start wanting to apologize to everybody, and you start crying out for forgiveness, and your sins start weighing on you. Like Anton LaVey's daughter was at his deathbed, and the last words that Anton LaVey spoke was, "Oh no." What did he say? He said, "Something's wrong." That's what he said. Now, if anybody gave it...
Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, there we go. If anybody gave Gnosticism the old college try, the journey of do as thou wilt, it was Anton, baby.
Yeah.
And by the way Anton got into the left-hand path or whatever, he was at a carnival, and he saw some Baptist preacher scoping out chicks.
Yep.
And he got offended. Well, Jesus didn't scope out chicks. So get your eyes off of man, because they'll let you down. Jesus is God, and he came down and lived a perfect life for you. He made the 10 Commandments for you. And all you got to do is jump on his ship, and you get to go be a child of God through adoption. You'll never measure up. Anyway, I'm sorry to be all religious. I'm sorry to go all that way, but how did we get there? I'm sorry, everybody. Please forgive me.
I think it's relevant. It actually has a lot more to do with what's going on and how the world is ran than I think people want to give credit to.
Yeah.
Anton LaVey is an interesting person. He actually grew up in the carnival, so his family was a bunch of carnies.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's a very, very interesting story. And it's what he created with the Church of Satan was basically a juvenile reactionary just that is just a reactionary call to Christianity. And a majority of those Satanists, even if they're, card carrying members of the church, they do it to spite Christians, which, okay, fine. But that doesn't make it, that doesn't make it what they say it is. However, there are people out there that truly do believe in the existence of a much higher being that is not of a good nature, and it's not even a being itself; it's a lack of a being, and either that or themselves being the being. Can I say being any more times? But it's interesting. I think a lot of this really does come from a self-manifestation. Whether you believe in these things or not, people out there do, and whether you're on the side of Christianity and the millions of branches that have broken off from there, or you reject Christianity or Judaism, Muslim, it doesn't matter. You're putting the energy into it. And so a lot of this stuff is going to self-manifest from that. Energy is an incredible thing. And I don't think people really realize the impact that actually has on our daily lives. It's actually quite incredible. That's why these electronic dance music festivals actually scare the hell out of me. On the surface, it looks like a bunch of young adults, teenagers having fun, listening to techno music. A lot of them are doing drugs and stuff, but it's like weaponized music. And this is actually fairly well known that certain intelligence agencies actually weaponize the music at a certain frequency to be able to open you up and be more suggestible to certain behaviors. And you've got one massive crowd there, all in unison, all opened up on a vibrational level. That's going to introduce some really interesting things into the mix.
I know it. Society is just a petri dish. We're just like mice in a maze. It's so disconcerting.
Yeah, there's the rat utopia experiment, which I find is really interesting. I don't know if it proved it, but it showed that once society reaches a certain point, it always collapses.
Have we reached that point yet, Jacob? Because it seems like we're about to collapse.
So I don't believe we have. I believe what we are experiencing is actually artificially produced.
A lot of fear being injected into the matrix to neutralize us.
That, and the people at the top seem to want to usher in the second coming. And so through their abilities, they are, ushering in a lot of what's told in the end times, hoping that it's going to trigger the second coming, which, whether you believe or not, I don't know why you would want to do that. That seems absolutely insane.
All right, well, this is a really cool topic because there's a lot of really smart people that are convinced, and well, for good reasons, that we are living in the period of time after the millennial reign. I am now probably one of them. I'm pretty much convinced that it's true. So just to bring everybody up to speed, there's a very, very weird passage in the book of Revelation. I think it's chapter 20. And it says, after the millennial reign, it says Satan, who was cast into the pit for 1,000 years, the bottomless pit, he's let out again. It says he's let out for a little while to deceive the nations. It's called Satan's little season. It's what's in the Bible, man. Well, how would you know if you're not in that period of time? So what evidence is there, John? Well, first of all, you've got mud flood evidence all over the world. You've got melted buildings. But then you have what we call architect, which are these impossible structures all over the world. Buildings that we've looked at with our own eyes all our life. Ornate churches, stonework that couldn't be produced today. Okay, for instance, do you really believe
supposed to be produced by hand tools and mules with carts?
Correct. No power tools in the span of a year or two.
Yeah.
I've seen so many analysis where they go in, they look at what the history is telling us. One guy did an analysis on this one church. I mean, these structures are so incredibly ornate. All stone masonry carved. I don't know how they do it. Anyway, this particular building required over 1 million pounds of marble to produce. And the quarry was 300 miles away. And they said they built it in like a year and a half. And he was like, yeah, right. If they had 50 horse and carriages, wagons, right, it would have taken them just 5 or 6 years to get all the marble there, much less build the thing, with no power tools. So apparently there's all this evidence, with the orphan trains and the World's Fairs where they have pictures of cubicles lined up with incubators selling babies, postcards and billboards with ads, babies for sale, money back guarantee. I mean, really wiggy stuff in our history that's now coming out. that there's a lot of evidence supporting the fact that there's like 1,000 years missing from our timeline. So we're not actually in the year 2024. We're in the year 1024 or somewhere thereabouts, which means, and this is not preterism as I understand it, which means the tribulation has already happened. The mark of the beast, the tribulation, and the millennial reign in this narrative have already happened. You talk about a mind blow. And then there's two wars. There's Armageddon, but then there's the battle of Gog and Magog. And that one has as its marker, and I have to go back and look at it more closely, but eschatology is very difficult to nail down, right? It looks like Gog and Magog is where the Euphrates River dries up and the 200 million man army can cross over. Well, guess what? Look it up. The Euphrates River is drying up right now. So that pushed me towards the fact that we are actually, with all the other evidence, potentially in this period of time after the millennial reign. Well, that means you got to interpret everything, if you believe that, from differently. Everything you see is, there's so much deception. And that means that all of the markers that look like we're going into the tribulation, the mark of the beast, are fabricated to make you believe that. Because remember, he's released to do what? Deceive the nations. It's incredible. The rabbit holes just get deeper and deeper
Yeah.
as we keep going.
It is interesting.
Oh man, it hurts my brain.
Anyone listening, regardless of what you believe, I think it's safe to bet that there is a lot of deception going on.
Yeah.
And at the very least, you might want to ask why.
Right.
And you can come up with all kinds of reasons. I know I think I asked you this on the last episode, but okay, first of all, how do you feel about people who aren't questioning anything that's happening around them? Because there's some incredible things that's really hard to ignore, at least for me. And there's still some people out there that, think the government's batting 1,000 and just totally telling us the truth on everything. And there aren't people out there lying and deceiving around every corner. What is your opinion on people like this?
I wrote a book about it. I mean, that's what the book is all about. Is the first half of the book is inside the mind of the unconvinced. Or no, it's the second half of the book. The first half of the book is inside the mind of truthers. So there's two groups, and we struggle with definitions, but basically the presenting characteristic of the unconvinced, or what we call the normie, is that they don't know and they don't want to know. That's what they say. They tell you that. And they certainly act that way when you try to start bringing up things that are not approved by officialdom. Okay?
That's not fact-checked.
That's right. Snopes has not approved this, therefore, you're crazy. So that mentality is a mystery. It's a very debilitating thing. It's caused me to lose my family after 24 years of marriage. I mean, I literally cried this morning. I cried yesterday. I cry every day when I think that my children, when teenagers, are growing up without their father, because I found out one of these things after another and, became a content creator, which just exacerbated the chasm that was growing between us. And I couldn't manage it like a lot of people, which is what precipitated me being a content creator, is the amount of people that were posting every day saying, yeah, John, my kids don't talk to me. Yeah, John, my spouse divorced me. Hundreds over the years. Hundreds. And I was stupefied by the universality, if that's a word, of our journey. So if you're a truther, you are vocal about it, you're probably walking a lonely road. I don't have to convince you that I'm not bitter and vengeful and, self-pity in my own echo chamber. Please don't insult my intelligence. This is a hell ride. There's no happy bells in finding out all these things. and then standing for it. You're going to be persecuted. That's the book's subtitle is A Guidebook for Persecuted Truthers. So some people manage it better. I got complex childhood trauma. I probably could have done a lot of things better. I get it. We say too much, blah, blah, blah. But when it came down to it, this is what I've never seen. I've never seen a truther go to their spouse and family and say, if you don't talk to me about these things I've discovered, I refuse to have a relationship with you. Have you ever heard that?
No, not once.
No, and neither has anybody listening to us. However, what I have heard, I don't know, hundreds of times, is that the unconvinced tells us, if you talk about crazy things, I can't have a relationship with you. So there you go. There's an empirical observation that it's not us that are incapable of having a relationship. It's them. They are the ones that force us with a shut up or else order to adopt their worldview by remaining silent for the rest of your life, or else. And forgive me if I sound a little edgy, but it's cost me everything to refuse to cow to the central planners who are slow killing us, enslaving us, and I refuse to participate in a crime against myself. I told my wife, I got off the bus, honey. I can't clap for NASA like a trained SEAL. I can't have these conversations I finally created a list. It's in the book. It's like on page 197, I think. And it's 3 pages long of stuff that I can't talk about with you, because if you knew what I believed, you'd think I was crazy. So those topics are crazy. So if you tell me don't talk about anything that's crazy, but you don't define that, I'm going to define it for you. And it basically means we don't have a relationship, because everything's crazy.
Yeah. This is a crazy life. So I not talk about crazy things. Okay, I can only handle a sports conversation for so long.
Right.
I love sports, I do, but that it's not my focus. I don't.
That's the key right there. What you are highlighting is a really key thing. This is what I hear all the time, and I experienced it. If I got to go to one more family gathering and talk about blah, 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 I'm going to go crazy. Okay, so what is that? You find out you're in the Truman Show, basically. If you ever watched the Jim Carrey movie, The Truman Show, he lives in a TV studio, and he doesn't know it until he's an adult. But when he finds out, he's pissed, okay? And I want you to imagine that he finds out he's in the TV studio, and then he says this, oh, what difference does it make? I still got to go to work, don't I? And he just goes back to work. That would be unthinkable, right?
Yeah, it would make a very boring movie.
Right. So what he did is he tried to escape, but the Matrix was blocking him. The fires would come up, the traffic jams would come up all of a sudden. All these things were trying to block him from leaving the Matrix. That's your family. That's your, the Matrix does not treat you well if you try to leave. And people that leave the Matrix look crazy to those that are still in the Matrix.
Yes.
You look crazy. Well, that's what they say about you. You're crazy. You're a kook.
I think it's the other way around, but...
Right. It's the crazy people calling the sane people crazy.
Yeah. I had a conversation recently where I was having speaking of some, terrible things going on in the world. And they were like, oh, so you're one of these Q conspiracy people. I'm like, oh, no, I'm much worse.
Yes.
I think Q is like a government psyop meant to throw off all these things. And it's like, if you want to know what I really believe,
right,
it's going to throw you through a loop.
Totally, dude. Like I did this one talk recently. It's called Help. I have more than 10 rabbit holes in my portfolio. So what I found was, like you and I are driving, right? But I've done 46 of these interviews now. And there's been some where the podcast host was really more of a normie than he was a truther. like they were edgy about, well, don't talk about flat Earth because that's ridiculous. Okay, Mr. Truther, what you think is obvious is crazy to normies. So what I realize is there's a direct correlation between how many rabbit holes you're down and how your ability to get along with people. Because it gets to a point where it's like somebody rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. It's so obvious you're about to die that rearranging the deck chairs becomes an offense to you. Okay? You're offended by the normie. Yeah. So you have to, but if it's your wife or your husband and your children, I'm not advocating that you pull the ripcord on their relationship. You have to place them higher. So for my case, for the last 2 years I was in the home with my wife, married, and the kids, I said nothing. I was happy dad. Hair, nails, fun seasons in the sun, whatever you want to talk about. Movies, play dates, bowling, landscaping, church, God, bills, life, dude, but nothing, negative or controversial, nothing about geopolitical stuff, nothing. I would go to the dinner table, I would just eat my meal. I just became like in a shut off mode. And so it didn't work though, because I was still branded. I was still the elephant in the room. I finally was asked to leave. And then I stayed with my brother for a year because he had a second room. And when I finally left, he said, it was really hard being with you. I said, why? He said, because of what you believe. I said, I never said anything to you. I said, in fact, 3 or 4 times you brought up things and I changed the subject. He said, I know, but just knowing what you believe made it hard to be with you.
Interesting.
Well, there you go. Okay, so now your reputation precedes you. So you go to the family gathering now. It's your sister-in-law's house. It's a holiday thing, whatever. And then the people are over in the corner elbowing each other. Oh, here comes Jacob. Oh, get ready. You're targeted. The Matrix doesn't treat you well. And you're going to have to decide how you are going to respond to this persecution. Because it's going to happen to you. Because the majority of people are not awake.
It's a cult, right? And that's how the cult saves itself.
Yeah.
It's shunning any non-believer.
Yeah, it's tribal for sure. It's more than just a belief system. It's a tribe you belong to, and the people are not willing to give up that community very easily because it's costly, right?
Yeah.
They know what's going to happen to them if they join your little posse because they're the ones persecuting you. So they know what they're going to get.
Exactly, and that it's not very attractive. It's like, why would I want to go through that when I could just stay ignorant and stay happy? Well,
I covered that in the beginning of the book. I talk about why. What makes you tick, Truther? What made you decide to, jump over to Pew and accept Jesus, so to speak? It's integrity. Okay, integrity is that you know what is right, first of all. So it's a set of morals. But if you don't obey the morals, you don't typically are pictured as having integrity. So integrity is a verb. And integrity dictates that when you see that, for instance, let's use NASA, the picture from Earthrise. So the first picture of the Earth from the moon, supposedly, if you put it into Photoshop and change the contrast, a square artifact appears. And photo experts will tell you the only explanation for that is it was cut and pasted into the picture to deceive you. So that's a lie. You could easily see all of the things with the ISS, bubbles coming out of their helmets. The guys are on wires. They're passing mics to themselves that aren't there. They're lying there. And then, of course, the picture of the Earth, the big blue marble, was created by Robert Simon. And he admitted that it's 12 strips of data, that he then added clouds and color. And it's Photoshop. It has to be. That's what he said. Okay, so There's 3 examples that are undisputed by NASA that they've been lying to all of humanity. Well, let's just use a picture of the Earth. They don't dispute that anymore. They admit that they've been lying for decades. Now they're saying, well, this is their explanation for the picture of the Earth from space being a cartoon. Because they've been telling us it's the picture of the Earth from space. Now they're telling us it is a cartoon.
It is
and they say
artist's interpretation.
So this is their explanation. Well, that's the expectation that people would have of what it would look like. So we had to do it that way. No, you're a lying sack of dog biscuits. That's what you are.
I have an expectation to wake up every day and have a wonderful day, but it doesn't always work out that way, unfortunately. So, I mean, yeah, it's...
So the integrity thing is this.
It's really hard.
You see those 3 examples of lying, and integrity tells you they're lying, and that's wrong. That's your conscience tells you it's wrong. So then integrity steps in and says, well, if they're lying, then I can no longer continue to do business as I've been doing. I'm going to have to speak up at family gatherings. I'm going to have to stop participating in, like when I see a guy in the diner and he's got the NASA t-shirt on. Okay? I can't participate in being a NASA fanboy anymore. And that is going to create a hellstorm on par with the Spanish Inquisition for you. But integrity says to you, I don't care. Integrity demands compliance. So you go down that road of that lonely road of going where integrity demands you go, which is you're going to take the truth and carry it like a good soldier. And God help you. Read my book. That's all I can tell you.
Highly recommend it, by the way.
Yeah.
Very well done. So that's always been my driving factor is truth. And that's what led me where I am. It was almost inevitable, like it was laid out beforehand. Also, I have Irish and Native American blood in me, so I have, an innate response to authority that, I tend to reject it if it's not if it's not true authority, and there's a whole lot of false authority.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I almost have an innate sense to reject false authority. But what do you think it is, this attraction to the truth? Why do you think it's so important? Because obviously there is the argument that, well, we could just keep our heads buried in the sand.
Yeah. Well, it's like if you're swimming, let's say you're a young person and somebody comes up from behind you, you're in a lake somewhere, and they grab you, and you could tell it's a strong man. You're just a 10-year-old boy, and they grab you by the neck, and they push you under the water. What is the only reaction to that? Okay, you're going to start fighting for your life. That's what being a truther is. You find out the world is not run by public servants. They're not public servants now. They're the authorities. And you then find out that they're not only like tyrannical, they're very deeply spiritual on the dark side. So they're basically blood-drinking, Luciferian blood-drinking psycho mobsters. They're capitalist, murderous psychopaths. Psychopaths gravitate to positions of power, and they occupy the majority of them. And they are ruled by people above them that are even more evil and ultimately not even human. The bloodline people are descendants of the Nephilim. So they're not even humans. It's so bizarre when you get up into the higher echelons of what's really going on. Because you got the low level down where we are, and all the religion, governments, police, education, media, and the governments all run by corporations through special interest.
And
But they're
NGOs.
Yep, but IMF, central banks, Bank of International Settlements is a big one. The whole world system is Babylonian debt slavery. But their control group is the Bilderberg Group. And that's where all the planning is going on, which, by the way, was a conspiracy theory for decades. And then, people just kept going there. And now they have their own website. And they say, well, of course we meet. And then above that's the United Nations, Chatham House, the Royal Institute of International Affairs. These are like all these shadowy organizations, and they're basically circumscribed under the Freemason lodges and all the secret societies. But above that, you've got these think tanks. And this is where planning is done on the decades in advance. So like things like the Ukraine war or whatever these things are, they don't just crop up at the last minute. These things are planned decades in advance. At the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, Vatican. You got the 3 city-states, the Vatican Crown, Washington, City of London. So you got the financial world capital, the military, and the religious. And then you got the Committee of 300, the Crown Council of 13. Imagine being a fly on the wall in the Crown Council of 13. You want to really understand what you're seeing on CNN or Fox News or Truth or Community, anywhere in the data sphere. What's actually happening out there in the world is being controlled by the Crown Council of 13. They're the ones running the world. They have all the money and all the power. Ultimately, God has all the power over them, but free will has been allowed.
Reject it.
What's that?
Except for they reject that.
They reject what?
The power of God, typically.
Right. And going back to our discussion with Anton LaVey, I remember picking up a book in the library or a bookstore. It was called Satanism by Anton LaVey, I think is the title. And I flipped open the first page, and it said, the purpose of Satanism is self-indulgence. I thought that was interesting. Because, Christianity then would be the opposite of that. Self-sacrifice. And so what you find is there's a law of diminishing return. If you've ever gone on a fast where you purposely stop eating, when you go back to eating, a bite of bread is like an experience. You can't even imagine how good the bread tastes. Or you bite into an orange and it makes your eyes roll back in your head because the flavor experience has been enhanced tenfold by not having it. So scarcity increases enjoyment. Whereas the Satanist and the atheist who is following, the dictates of do as thou wilt. What's the guy's name? The most wicked guy?
Crowley.
Aleister Crowley. That whole left-hand path journey of self-indulgence leaves you wanting. Like there's a passage in the Bible where God was upset with the children of Israel. He got them out of Egypt and they're wandering through the desert and all they did is complain. And finally God got fed up and he gave a strong wind and he gave them a quail. All these quail came flying into the camp and they ate the quail. So basically it says he gave them what they wanted, but he sent leanness of soul into them. So that's the end result of drinking the cup of devils to the dregs. You've masturbated until your penis falls off. You've stared at pornography until your eyes are hanging down by your kneecaps. And you can no longer function. Your subconscious and your central nervous system is fried to a crackly crisp. And I've never met a Satanist or an atheist who has joy. Never. They have a lot of reasoning, but I've never met one that was bouncy and full of joy and smiles. Never. They might have money.
I can't think I have either.
And happiness, but joy bubbles up from within, and it paints a picture on your face that's just indescribable and desirable. So joy and bliss and equanimity only come from self-sacrifice. Ha ha ha! Sorry, it's God's universe. You were born into God's universe, bro. Not you, Jacob. I'm talking to
Yeah.
whoever's listening. You were born into his universe, and you are going to violate his laws at your own peril. It is a take it or leave it offer, sir, ma'am. There's no apologies. There's no explanations. It says, I set before you life and death. Choose life that you may live. Now the ball's in your court.
So, do you think that a lot of how would I phrase this? So, for instance, I mean, there's a lot of people that do a lot of really bad things, really god awful things that I can't say on the stream because I don't want to get a strike. Thanks, big tech overlords. But there people that just do some really terrible things. That there's some ritualistic abuse cases here in the state of Utah, and the fact that I even just said that string of 3 words together is incredible to me. But this is happening often enough, and there's a huge long history of it. And these people, and I use that term loosely because I don't know how you could be a person and do any of these or commit any of these crimes and have or be considered a part of society. But is that just somebody who has fallen away, or somebody that was possibly born with that innate rejection of all that is good?
Well, I can attest to the fact that there are people that kind of defy logic, how they were, like a serial killer at the age of 12 is just unexplainable. I've seen cases like that. But going back to the self-indulgence thing, there's the law of diminishing return. If you drink the cup of devils, the next time you go for the drink, you got to drink a little more. And so you have to get a little edgier in your sexual expression. You have to get a little edgier in your experimentation with, the occult. So you start out with the Ouija board, and then you graduate to whatever, and eventually you join a coven, and then you're sacrificing chickens, and then you get sent to a certain level, and then you're invited to their first human sacrifice. So it doesn't all happen overnight, but eventually you're going to want more power, more rush, more spells, more things, and your quest and lust for power really is a lust for significance, not power. Like when you're 5 and you say, look what I can do. Nobody had to teach you to say that. You have an innate desire to be desired.
We are herd creatures, so it does make sense.
Well, you want to be loved. You want to be wanted. That's the female's central need, is centricity. But men have it as well. You're a little boy, and you're like, look what I can do, Mommy. Look, are you watching? Are you watching? Are you watching? So that we never lose that. It just, it sort of morphs into something more mature. But, maybe you have a lot of money, so you bought a Porsche, and you love pulling up to the red light. I mean, you're just bathing, and look at me. And you're sitting there at the light, and you can look out of the corner of your eye. You can see the people looking and checking your car out. And you're just loving it. Because you want to be loved. So you find out there's power in Satanism, and you think, oh, if I have those powers, then people will respect me, and I'll be powerful, and I can rule the coven. I can be the most powerful warlock in the coven. No, you're miserable. Look at the mirror, man. You got nothing but misery, and you know it. And God will see to it that you're miserable. Your darkness doesn't feed your soul. It's a sick, twisted world you live in. You know it. You're a moral being. You had a conscience. You fried it to death. But you could get it back. You could come back to God, the prodigal father, right? The prodigal son got his inheritance. He went and wasted it on riotous living. That's you. And he finally ended up in the pig pen. eating the husks that even the pigs didn't want. And the Bible says he came to himself. So maybe this little convo is for you. And you're like, I'm pretty fried. I gotta admit it. I'm pretty fried. I'm not happy. I'm suicidal. I'm strung out. I use alcohol to drown my pain. I'm not doing well. I have no friends. Whatever your presenting negative issues are.
And boys, there are a lot of that these days.
Yeah. Proof's in the pudding. That's what got me. I was 23. I had already lived 3 lives by the time I was 23. I started smoking cigarettes when I was 4. Both my parents were raging alcoholics. And, I was massively sexually abused by multiple people. I was a head case, and I was just, wanted to be a rock star and drive a Porsche. That was my goal. And I ended up in this church, long story short, and these people were singing, "Lift Jesus higher, lift Jesus higher." And I'm a rock star to be. And this little old lady on the piano and this teenager on the drums singing these corny songs, and I'm weeping. I'm just like weeping because the atmosphere was supercharged with liquid love. It wasn't emotionalism. It was supernatural. It was something from another dimension came into this room and enveloped anybody in the room. And I was like a dry sponge. And this was like a rainstorm. And all I could do was stand there and weep uncontrollably, bawling, with no explanation, except that I felt what I had longed for my whole life. And when they got through the whole thing, it's a whole dog and pony show, and the guy preached. And at the end, he's like, if you're here today and you're not absolutely sure you'd go to heaven, you can come up and receive the gift of eternal life. I jumped over the pew, man. And I said this little prayer, "Dear Jesus, forgive me of my sins, come into my life." Whatever. Say what you want. Next day, I'm sitting in the basement with my friends, Tom Daglish and Rob Hall. And they passed me the joint. And I looked at it. And I was like, I don't need that anymore. And then, of course, they were cursing. And it shocked me all of a sudden. I couldn't explain that. And all these things just started happening that were like so supernatural. And just the presence of God is then in your life, which you can't explain. And that's what it's like. So do it. Just go say his name. When you get done here, just go in the closet or wherever, sit down, and just say his name, Jesus. If you're real, I want this Jesus thing. I mean, thief on the cross was like, remember me when you come into your kingdom. That was all he said. And the next thing Jesus says, today you'll be with me in paradise. So that dude didn't try to reform himself. He didn't decide, I'm going to become a good person and stop smoking. No, he was on the cross, a thief. And so then, but he perceived that Jesus didn't belong there and that he was a holy man, and he threw him a bone of honor, And then Jesus accepted that and flipped the guy right then and there. Last minute conversion. No, so it's free. See, that's the key. This is a free gift. You just have to accept it. That's it. You have to humble yourself.
That's
and
like
accept
the
it.
hardest part for most people.
Yep. That's the hardest part, is right.
So one thing I do want to address, because first of all, this is always fascinating to me, is mind control, manipulation, deceivers. I've always had a really strong interest from a young kid in, sleight of hand and illusions, prestidigitation. It's fascinating to me how easily manipulated we are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all fun when it's fun, but there's people out there that definitely use certain tricks like this to cause harm or to gain an edge or any of these things. And this happens within plenty of circles. The religious circles, within any conspiracy movement, 9/11 truth was, and still is, mostly just littered with people just poisoning the well, so to speak. And I mean, I do genuinely believe that QAnon was a psyop that was introduced to be able to throw people off and to be able to use it to be pointed at and say, well, see, this is crazy.
Or it was real and then it got co-opted. But either way, it's the same result.
I do believe that the core belief, like Pizzagate, all of that's all real. That is definitely all real. But the emergence of Q itself is what I believe the psyop is. Mm-hmm. It's a way to make it look crazier than it actually is, because they couldn't just ignore the Pizzagate thing. They can't do that, and so they've got to double down on it.
They got to co-opt the movement. That's for sure. They do that all the time.
Yeah, and it happens a lot. The FBI is very well known for that. Mm-hmm. It just, look at COINTELPRO. It's so. My question about that is how often have you come across people within, I don't want to just call it this movement, because I don't know, that's a little limiting, but just when in your normal dealings with people who don't have their head stuck in the sand, how many times have you come across somebody that just seems completely misled within not having their head stuck in the sand, I guess?
Say that again. I didn't quite follow your question.
How many times have you come across somebody that, I guess, took too many red pills way too quickly and fell down the rabbit hole and just never came back out of them? And because there's obvious traps set all around us. And it's very clear that if we get stuck in some of these, that doesn't look good for any truth movement. And I still don't like the term truth movement. I think that's why I'm having difficulties.
I know we struggle with terminologies a lot. I know.
So, yeah, for sake of argument, just the truth movement. There's obviously bad faith actors.
Well, I mean, I think I understand your question. I did a talk called "The Sins of Conspiracy Theorists," and basically, confessing my own sins is, you talk too much to the people that don't want to hear it. But it's really hard not to because the amount that you talk about is directly correlated to how much of urgency you have. See, the normie accuses you of being obsessed, which is an inordinate interest in things that you shouldn't be interested in, right? But the truther is accusing the normie of being apathetic. Okay, in other words, if you're in a burning building, you're supposed to be obsessed. That is the correct normal response. So the more you sense danger, the more you're going to talk about things. It's like going all the way to the end where you're arranging deck chairs on the Titanic. That makes no sense. Imagine them, hey, help me arrange the deck chairs. And they start grabbing you and starting to pull you over. You're going to break free physically from them. So that's one answer to your question. But the other one, and we talked about how our movements are co-opted. One of the things that I believe has been injected into the truther movement is the concept that everyone's a shill. So I just did a talk called the pervasive fallacy that everyone's a shill. Because this has a chilling effect where people, are telling me, they're pulling the covers over their head. They're like, John, I can't think straight. There's no hope. Everybody is controlled. Everybody's a shill. And what good is it? There's no use in trying to do anything. Well, that's definitely not the correct response, even if you're correct and everybody's a shill.
Yeah, it's the extreme in the opposite direction.
Right. And the problem is everybody isn't a shill, and if you believe that they are, then you stop giving them what they need, which is the people need to step up. You're not a shill, I'm not a shill, and so the farmers in the UK that just stormed the Bastille, they won. The government turned around and conciliated and gave them 400 million in subsidies. There was a Supreme Court judge in Canada that ruled against Trudeau that his actions were unconstitutional to seize the finances of the truckers. So is that judge a shill? And his decision to reverse Trudeau's decision, is that all part of this elaborate scheme to lull us into complacency? Because that's what we're asked to believe. Or are there still people scattered throughout the system that are not anti-human? I say yes, there are. And we need to fight wherever there's a fan, whatever flame there is, because that's what you're called to do. You're not called to be a wimp, basically, with an excuse. The 10 spies went into the promised land. 8 of them said, oh, there's giants in the land. That's a lot of truthers now. Oh, everybody's a shill. Well, no, 2 of the spies says we are well able to take the land. And what it says about those 2 spies is that they had a more excellent spirit. Then you got David, who killed a lion and a bear that tried to attack his sheep when he was a sheep herder. He came down and saw the armies of God were afraid of Goliath, wouldn't engage him. Send out your champion. And David saw it. He was like, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that defies the armies of God? He got his little slingshot. Bam! Took out Goliath. So that's the response to what seems to be an impossible, intractable enemy. Is you pull the fact that you are a child of God and all of heaven backs you, and you go out and you tell the sun, like Joshua said, sun, stand still over the valley of Ajalon. And the Bible says that God answered his prayer, and never before and never since has God answered such a prayer. He stopped the sun in the sky so they could win the battle. So God's going to give us those types of victories on the way to, complete tyranny or going to the camps or whatever. Yeah. How do you like that?
I like it. It's so.
You know what I'd really like to talk about is Trump. Trump is probably the biggest hot button in the truther community, and everybody thinks he's a shill.
One moment before we get to that, because I have the perfect meme to kind of end on that to move into the next part of the conversation.
All right.
I found this, and it's absolutely hilarious. I think you'll get a kick out of it.
Sweet.
Let me fix you some of this new Mococo drink. All natural cocoa beans from the upper slopes of Mountain Nicaragua. No artificial sweeteners.
What the hell are you talking about? Who are you talking to?
I've tasted other cocos. This is the best.
That is hilarious. And wait a moment, a word from our sponsor.
Yeah.
I just watched that the other day just to go back and watch it again. It was incredible.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Oh my gosh.
Watching his transformation. I find it interesting that he always had this feeling deep down that things just were a little too perfect. And I always have that feeling, almost like a uncanny valley feeling.
Yeah.
That's why I'm always weary of echo chambers,
yes.
Especially because of my politics. Being a libertarian, there's many echo chambers within libertarianism.
Definitely.
And so, it's very weary. But another echo chamber to move the show along is Trump. And the cult of personality that has been formed around him, and the anti-cult of personality.
Yes.
So, what would lead you to believe that Trump is not a shill?
All right. Well, let me start by saying that I actually do believe he's a shill, but not the way that you probably think. I believe that very much like the Democrat-Republican narrative strung us along for decades, and many of us found that out as one of the rabbit holes, is that after Kennedy probably, it didn't matter who you voted for, Democrat or Republican, both of them were controlled by the same guild. So they basically locked up the system with someone that they had appointed, and they were able to control. And so in a similar way, we now have what's called the black hat, white hat narrative. Now, the white hats are being portrayed as patriots. And I'm not saying I endorse these people or Trump, but I'm just telling you what the narrative is, because it's out there and you have to decide how you're going to respond to it. So you got General Flynn, you got Jocko, you got Mel K, X-22 report, Charlie Ward, Juan O'Savin. You've got all these people, Benjamin Fulford, what I call the good news truthers. And they are providing us with a constant stream of empirical evidence that supports this narrative, that Trump is in control of the military and is allowing the bad guys who are under his control to play out how bad they are publicly, to convert at least 80% of the population to realize how bad they are, at which point the military is then willing to step in and basically do a military coup, which is what's going to be required. And then there's all these backstories with the elite saying, if we can't rule the world, we'll burn it down. So all of the timelines keep getting pushed back because they say, they're going to nuke us or they're going to release a bioweapon and they have to not do anything yet. So, it's really frustrating. However, what is not logical to me, what doesn't seem to really add up, is that all of the attacks on Trump are fake. So the media, all the Democrats, Hollywood, everybody, all of the things that they went through, P-Gate, 2 impeachments, the list is endless. Mar-a-Lago, all of that was, he and the people doing it to him are both on the same team. And it's all designed to get you to like him, basically, to follow him. I find that to be irrational. What I believe is more rational, 2 scenarios. One is that there are factions within the deep state that are not getting along. That seems so much more logical to me. So you've got the Russian mob, you've got the Chinese deep state, you've got the P3 Masons, you've got the White Dragons in Asia. The White Dragons are not anti-human. They don't want to annihilate 8 billion people. They want to just rule over them. Instead, then you've got the Rockefeller dynasty, which is Bush, Clinton's, Obama, and that's the most nihilistic, sickest one of all, and have the most power, I think. And so, then and then you've got Donald Trump, who has a pretty incredible record going way back for being a good guy. Like his driver and all these people around him always said he was nice and treated him fairly. He would go down, shake the hands of the people. Okay, all that's made up. I know you think that. All right, but you don't know that, though. You only assume that it's all made up. You weren't there.
That's easy to believe considering so much is made up. I see
That's
how
true.
It can be attractive.
Of course, we're all jaded, we're all suspicious, we're all cynical. But what I'm suggesting is that what's more probable is, first of all, you have him coming in, not anti-human as a globalist, but not part of this white hat scenario where he's a white hat to save us, like really free. Like he's still a globalist, okay, but the other factions don't want him to save us, so they're fighting him. Now, there's a second scenario that I'm actually leaning towards. And check with me next month, I may have a different theory. But this idea that the black hat, white hat scenario is the same as the Democrat-Republican narrative, where they're both two wings of the same bird. So in the biblical context, you have this end time scenario where the white hats are going to be brought in to expose and vanquish the black hats and take over. But the white hat are Freemasons as well. And they're going to implement the Noahide laws, and you're also going to come under a one world system, and the Christians will have their heads chopped off anyway by the white hats. So either way, you're either on the side of evil or you're on the side of God. Either way, white hat or black hat. And that's basically what I believe is what Trump is. So because all of us had that hope when he first came in. A lot of us did. Maybe this is like God rose up Cyrus. God rose up an evil king to deliver his people, Cyrus. So that's the problem I have with the everybody's a shill narrative, is it discounts God's intervention. God could do whatever he wants, thank you very much. And he's still good. He's not done, See, that's the narrative, everybody's a shill, is like God is done with us. All we get from here on in is death and hammers and judgment. It's hell on earth. Okay. I'm not naive. And I'm not saying I know something you don't know. What I am saying is God is good, and he likes faith. He likes when David came down and killed Goliath. He likes the two spies in the face of certain death. Daniel refused to bow to the king's edict, and he prayed publicly, and he was thrown into the lion's den. He's like, bring it. The three Hebrew boys refused to bow to the king and eat the meat, and they only ate the vegetables, and so they threw him into the fiery furnace. They were like, bring it. They told the king, whatever you do is up to you, but we're not going to do it. Even the disciples were preaching, and the powers of that day came to them and said, shut up. And they said, whether it's right for you to speak, it's up to you, but we can't stay silent. So there's your biblical precedent to be an ass kicker, to bring a bucket of whoop ass to this world on your way out. Period. In the name of God. Like what are those dudes with the cross on them when they would fight like
The Templars.
the Templars? I don't know the whole story with them. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's true Christianity. True Christianity is you're a warrior class Christian. And you're mixing it up with all the bad stuff, and you get to win. You get to win every time. Ultimately, they get you, but you go out swinging.
So what do you think?
One last thing with Trump. What I believe Trump is actually a body double. I think Benjamin Fulford's probably right. He says he's got intel on, who knows, that Trump and his family were whisked away after the election was stolen to a military base. And it does make sense. The guy that we see now, it looks different. He's got white under his eyes. He's bigger. He's not as orange. He talks a little different. We know they have body doubles and clones. And that would explain why he doubled down on the vax. Because everybody jumped off the Trump train when he doubled down on the vax. I mean, he's Joseph Mengele.
They tried jumping on the DeSantis train, and boy, did that go off the rails quickly.
Well, that would explain it. If he's actually a body double, then the deep state is controlling Trump. He's a deep state clone. So now he's totally a shill. But it's just so hard to know, who's control. If there is any white hat control, like they say. I mean, there's certainly a lot of evidence that there's a white hat narrative. And there's, all these underground explosions. Are they actually blowing up the underground bases? Biden is not Biden. He doesn't look like the guy that served in the Senate for 20 years or whatever. And he's got a mask on. There's been 4 different Hillarys. Fat, skinny, tall, short. I mean, look at Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx supposedly succumbed to the vaccination thing. And then he comes back a couple months later, and his skin is 3 shades lighter. His head is completely shaped differently. It's not even a good clone. And that's who they're parading around now. That's Jamie Foxx. So we know they're able to clone people. So they could put a Trump clone in there. So now how are you going to...
Interesting.
Now, if that's true, how are you going to formulate any kind of coherent geopolitical opinion? I hear these people talking about Trump, and I'm like, what if it's not even Trump? It's really difficult.
Wouldn't that, if that were the case, wouldn't that, how could somebody come back from that though? Because I mean, you would have to expose it. Like you would have to have two Trumps in one area.
Yes, if the real Trump emerges, well, there would have to be the mass arrest, like they say. There's 200,000 sealed indictments and all that stuff. And then, but you are seeing them quietly disappear, from starting with John McCain, and then Kerry just stepped down. That ghoul, that climate czar ghoul, trying to tell us we have to stop farming because the carbon footprint's going to kill us. I'm like, I think not having food will definitely kill us. I prefer to take my chances with the carbon footprint, thank you.
Yep.
But he just stepped down. I mean, why? Pelosi stepped down. See, those are the things that the white hats point to show that what they've done is they've sued for peace. They've allowed these Luciferians to exit the public stage instead of blowing up the world. We'll let you go off in exile and not hang you. That's the narrative. I'm not saying I believe that. I've seen the white hat narrative tell us that Hillary has been hung in Gitmo like 17 times. Okay, I just saw another one like the other day. Hillary was and now they've hung Oprah 17 times.
Could we only be so lucky?
Yes. Now, I did just see in Oprah, they trotted out some person that looked like Oprah saying this was Oprah at some gala, and it wasn't her. It looked totally different. So those are the things that make you wonder. I heard Jack Black say in an interview, if you go against them, they'll kill you and put a clone in. He said that in an interview. And I know it's true. Look at Jamie Foxx. Just look at Jamie Foxx's picture. It's ridiculous.
That one was shocking.
Yeah.
I tend to not only be highly skeptical, but a lot of them are just like, from doing photography, I know how a lens and lighting can change the look of a person, but the Jamie Foxx one was very shocking. And I mean, it could be as simple as that's what the experimental gene therapy did to him. I don't know. I'm not I'm not a virologist, but it doesn't look like the same person.
I don't think the gene therapy would change the shape of your head. He's got like a thinner head now, and his skin is 3 shades lighter. He almost looks like a white dude.
So the only pushback that I would give on that is just because, I mean, we have an entire government organization meant to fool people using digital photography. So to say that there couldn't be some existence of, and this is, I guess, kind of what I was pointing to with throwing people off the trail. There's also like a healthy level of skepticism, especially in the age that we live in with the post-truth era. AI now being as advanced as it is, advancing every day, although it's still really stupid compared to what people think it is, which it's not. But seeing 2 AI videos compared next to each other from a year ago and one today is incredibly shocking.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I'm fairly skeptical of a lot of the clone narrative. Not that it's impossible, because I remember in grade school when my teachers, they were so excited about the advancements in society where they could, clone a sheep. And it's like, that was back in the 90s.
Dolly the
So-
sheep. Yeah, if they could clone a sheep, do you think
Yeah.
they'd clone a person? Of course.
Of course they would. These people have been known to do some really terrible things, so they're not like. There's so many people that are like, well, of course not. That's illegal. That we would know about that. No, we wouldn't. No, we wouldn't.
No, we wouldn't.
And it's very well known that there's human animal crimeas, and that's actually well documented, which is terrifying. So why wouldn't they create somebody that was just barely passing? It's like, he'll fool most people.
Yeah, it's almost
So,
like they don't really care
possible.
that much. It's almost like everything's about to come down and they don't really need to try to have the cloak of decorum anymore. Like the velvet glove of tyranny's come off for sure. And, who knows what's coming. The white hat narrative is that nothing can stop it. They've got all the evidence, and everything we're seeing is a last-ditch desperate move to try to push it back a little farther, but they know they're toast. Or what's really coming is the black hat scenario is going to prevail, and we're going to, all be ushered into 15-minute cities. They're going to do a big bio release, wipe out a bunch of people more, create the panic, crash the bank system. They shut off the food. They got 10,000 people a day coming over the border. I mean, we can't go another decade. I don't think we'll make it through this year. We're not going to make it through this year. They blew up 100 food manufacturing plants since last year. Major food manufacturing facilities. Just another one about a month ago. 1 million eggs a year just burned to ground. So they're basically shutting off the food. They're going to turn the switch on. Fed coin is already being used by all the corporations. You're going to wake up one morning and they're going to tell you everything in your bank account is either going to be denominated in Fed coin or you'll have nothing. Which would you prefer? What are you going to do? Unless you've
you'll
got
have to
your money.
opt into this agreement, and then all of your money will be transferred over. You'll sign up. You'll have this wallet. Good luck.
Right. So if there is a white hat narrative, what we're going to have to see is some hellacious arrests, public arrests, perp walks with orange jumpsuits and handcuffs of all kinds of like social media, Hollywood, political realm, all these people publicly arrested, tried, and either executed or put in prison. That's the only thing that will usher in a renaissance. Anything other than that,
Agreed.
and we're toast. And we're going to be toast soon.
Yeah. Just on the surface, they are not going to let Trump win again.
No, I don't see
I mean,
how we can even have an election.
After all those years of Russiagate, and the only thing that they could get him on is overinflating the value of a property,
Yeah.
which doesn't even affect anyone other than a faceless, nameless insurance corporation. Like,
Right.
how dare he lie to an insurance company?
Right. And see, you mentioned on this broadcast that something you said could have jeopardized this broadcast. So you are aware that you are personally the target of lawfare. You're being censored, right? Now,
Shadow banned, throttled, definitely.
and me as well. So the everybody's a shill narrative has as one of its components anybody in the data sphere at any high level that does good is automatically labeled a shill. Okay, but and the perception is true in the sense that the higher up you go, the less chance you have of having a soul and being a free, real person, occupying those offices. Now, it was possible with Trump, though, because the main thing they'll do to keep you out is that they'll lock up the money. You need a couple of $1 billion to run a campaign now. But he could have funded it himself. Mm-hmm. So he could have circumvented the blockade and gotten in there. However, my point is that as truthers, we have to think for ourselves. That's what defines us. So what I don't tolerate is decrees. Okay, so in other words, I've had people tell me, and I'm not saying he is or isn't, all right, but people will come to me and they say, Trump's a shill. And I'd say, why do you say that? Well, because he is. Okay, well, this is my pat answer. Your argument is unconvincing. Well, I saw him do a secret handshake. Okay. All right, so I got him coming in and doing an incredibly long list of things that were unprecedented. Changing the whole economic system, removing compliance stuff, just getting us out of the climate accord, obliterating the spell that the media had on the whole world.
Oh, if he did nothing else,
Okay.
he destroyed the media.
It was unbelievable what I saw this guy do. So I have that over here, and you have the fact that he had this kind of weird handshake. Your argument is unconvincing. What else you got? Well, the bankers, are all Zionists, and he's in with the bankers. Well, I looked into that. And again, I'm not saying Trump's coming to save us. I'm just saying, as a truther, we have to stop being dictated by people's decrees. A decree is not evidence. It's your statement of fact, like scientism,
Yeah.
All right, so the bankers bailed him out because he was making them tons of money, and they wanted him to keep going. So what else you got?
The same reason they kept doing business with Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
He was bringing them money.
Exactly.
They're bankers.
So they said, well, I see in his past he's got all this Freemason symbology in our... Okay. Like I said, he's a knight
rich
in...
people are into some weird things.
Right, and
They're
nobody's
so
arguing.
removed from the normal person.
Exactly. He got the one thing where he was on the bus and he came off and he had talked about grabbing some girl's private parts. Okay, so he's a whoremonger. And he's not like he's a knight in sliming armor is what we call him, if he's real.
Very, very crass.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a 80s Democrat from New York.
Yeah, exactly.
So the fact that he would say something like that was not shocking to me.
Right, but that isn't proof that he is in other words, a shill. Like in the law, you have involuntary manslaughter on one end of the spectrum, and then you have first-degree murder on the other end. First-degree murder is you sat there and you plotted and planned it out in advance. And so you're a liar. Or the preacher guy that had a thing in his ear, and his wife is out in the audience, interviewing people, finding out what's wrong with them, and then telling the guy, like the lady in the third row in the pink dress has cancer in her abdomen. And then the guy was like, the Lord is telling me you have cancer in your abdomen. Okay, that's a shill.
Yes.
You're a liar and you know it. Versus you have a different opinion than somebody, or you're slightly compromised, or you have to work the system. Like in politics, you may want to get this bill pushed through, which will actually help people, but the way our government system is set up, you have to get the opposing party to a percentage to agree with you. And so they say, well, we'll agree with you if you give us this.
Yep.
Okay, well, that doesn't make you a shill. You're just stuck in a broken system. So, again...
Hate the game, not the player.
Yeah, and so...
Yeah.
But the primary determining factor of whether somebody's a shill is just that they're occupying the office immediately makes them a shill. And in Trump's case, I would beg to differ. I would say that he could have possibly gotten in. But then the ultimate thing we do to evaluate if somebody's a shill is what they do. You could say all you want, but when you double down on the vax, you lost my confidence, 100%. Because no matter what else you do, because we all know what that thing is. I mean, obviously, if we all know, you have to know. And I don't care what.
I don't think he knew at the time, but he knows now.
I guess, man, it's just so obvious. So we'll see. I think this year we're going to find out everything. I really do.
Yeah,
2024.
It does seem like everything's boiling up.
Yeah.
The whole frog in a pot of slowly boiling water. It
Right.
just got ramped up way too quickly. I think they overplayed their hand with this whole COVID thing, and that it sent shockwaves through everything, and they just jumped too far ahead. Because up until that point, even after everything that has happened, the fact that we have illegals coming across the border, yet I still have to take off my shoes at a TSA checkpoint, is insane. Like, the fact that people can't put those two and two together is crazy. I can't take a bottle of shampoo, bigger than this through a TSA checkpoint because it could be a weapon, but an illegal comes across the border with no ID. They get given, a $10,000 gift card, continuous money, a place to stay, food, all of this stuff, and we don't even know who it is.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's a military operation for sure. They're coming up through Central America. They got a whole thing with camps. It's all funded. We're being overthrown. 10,000 a day. 10,000 a day. Military age men mostly now.
yeah,
And
I saw that it was up to 7.3 million people.
Yep.
Like, that is insane in 3 years.
And what's incredible is that California is actually allowing them to. There's now people that run for government and get elected and are on a police force that are illegal immigrants. They're legal aliens.
There's people that have tried to pass bills. I'm not sure if they went through. I'm a little focused on my state, but to basically make non-citizens members of the military in exchange for citizenship, which, whoa, okay, like, we already have an issue with criminals going into the military. Now we're just allowing anyone. And I believe it was the Navy or the Air Force that just removed the high school diploma requirement, which that doesn't seem smart. I mean, I don't even like high school diplomas. It doesn't mean anything, but it doesn't seem.
Just that you can hold it together as a youth long enough to get through 4 years of that says something about you,
Yeah, tenacity for sure.
Well, Obama, remember Obama's little speech about creating a military, civilian military brown shirt thing is, equal to the regular military. Remember that speech?
Yes. Oh, yes, I do.
And so if they occupy those positions with foreigners, there's nothing in them that's going to care about shooting on, posse comitatus, all that's out the window.
Not at all. Not at all. They're doing it for their citizenship and doing it for their family in the best of scenario. So they're going to follow orders.
Right, and the whole UN initiatives are being implemented all the way down at the local level. They're going to make it illegal for you to live alone. If you own your own home, it will become illegal for you to live alone in your own home, where you'll be forced. You'll be forced to put people in your home at gunpoint that are illegals and all this stuff. It's hell on earth. So that's why the legal education movement is growing so fast, because people realize, there is no more go along to get along. You're either going to, you're probably going to end up in the same place anyway, but at least this way you might extend it a little bit and at least get some glory on the way out. Win a few battles.
That's kind of where I'm at. I've always said that I'll die on my feet before I live on my knees.
Yeah. Yep.
And because otherwise, you have nothing at that point.
Yeah.
And I understand, like, the psychology behind somebody wanting to just, whatever, I'll just agree to it and I can just go about myself. It's not a hard fight. It's probably the hardest fight, but nothing in this life that's worth doing was ever easy. So that's why I can't understand, to come, I guess, full circle, I can't understand somebody who, even just in passing, just hears what's happening and be like, oh yeah, that sounds That sounds fine. I'm not going to question that at all. That.
Well, I could tell
doesn't
you,
make
I could
sense.
tell you with all my research what it is they want their happy life. They're happy. And, they go bowling and they do things that are fun. And they don't want that to be disrupted. Okay, you're a buzzkill to them. And they have none of it.
It was a buzzkill to me.
Yeah.
Not like I wanted this.
No. But that's pretty much at the core of the normie response, to shut down any conversation. Your attempt to bring up the moon landing, whatever, is cut short. They change the subject. They make it clear this is a no-go zone. And so how did you see the Lakers game? Or whatever they're going to change the subject to, it's clear that's a no-go zone. And you're just sitting there going, why wouldn't you want to know if you were being deceived? No sense of self-survival or self-instinct to survive. All animals have that instinct, but not the normie. The normie feels safe. They trust Fauci. They think that the medical emergency is real and they have to do their part. And it's just so bizarre to watch.
Yeah, it's against human nature.
And you're powerless too, because normies are like the British Guards, where you go up to them and they got those big hats, and you're like, hey, you try to get them to blink, and they won't blink. That's what normies are like. They will not look under the hood.
And I get not going to certain depths, but you don't even question that extra tax that was thrown on, or the fact that anybody listening can't think of a single part of their life that isn't taxed.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't call that indentured servitude.
Right.
I understand a consumption tax. If I decide to buy something and I pay a tax on it, okay, I voluntarily did that. But outside of that, I argue with people all the time, the taxation is theft. And no. Taxation is the price we pay to live in a civilized society. The one that, kills 14-year-old brown kids just for existing. And then funds the opposite side as well, so we come out on top either way. That's a civilized society. And even just, like I said, the most simple questions about what is going on, what is happening. And yeah, a lot of people, I've had people look at me and say, oh, wow, that's interesting. Anyways, and it just goes, just one ear right out the other. And they seem to not be affected by that. And that I don't understand.
Well, it's going to have to it's going to have to become so stifling that even the normie will be forced to admit that the system is weaponized, when they can no longer feed themselves, when they can no longer have any type of liberty. When the jackboot is on their neck, they'll be forced to admit that the government has become weaponized. But then it's too late.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That's really the essence of the truther movement. Our narrative is, you don't realize what's coming, and when it happens, you won't be ready. That's kind of our underlying message. And also, there's a sense of call to arms. There's a duty that men have, like our forefathers said, after a long train of abuses. That whole speech, it is our duty and our right to replace our old guards with new leadership. We've exhausted all the means of the legal front. And it's become clear and evident to us that the leadership has no intention of doing what's right. And so now we have created the government for our service. We are now authorized to replace them. And we're pretty much at that point. We aren't pretty much at that point. We are at that point. That's what's happened. Yeah. Obvious that that's happening. So we'll see we'll see if we can extend the timetable. That's my only optimism, is that perhaps we can extend the timetable. And, if we do get a white hat scenario where the white hat Freemasons come in and rule for a while, one of the other things that we might be witnessing is that the black hats are destined to fall on their swords and allow the white hats to come in, because that's the Luciferian agenda, because it makes sense. It's going to be a lot more palatable if the new landlord is like a good witch, right? Everybody will go along with this new world order because it's led by these white hat saviors, okay? But what if the black hats decide, you know what, I'm not going to fall on my sword. So they're fighting against their own dogma to allow the white hat Freemasons to come in, and now it's their turn to rule. And they're like, you know what, I like ruling. I think I'll fight against Trump.
Yeah, why should I give this up?
Yeah.
Just because somebody wrote it down.
That's right. Ago. It's just so crazy, man. What we're watching happen is so biblical, though.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. On that note, I think we are going to wrap up. And I think this is absolutely perfect to end the note, or end on this as well, is to always watch out, beware of the black pills, as they are hazardous to your health. If you or someone you know is affected, reject it. Report all black pill merchants. Black pills, I genuinely believe, are a government psyop, and they are meant to make us hopeless and to stop any sort of rejection of this basically, how should I categorize it? It's unjust authority. It is unjust authority being wielded upon us, and we need to do what we can to reject that. We need to stay hopeful, as hard as it may be, because if things were hopeless, their propaganda would be pointless, and it wouldn't exist.
Good point.
So, and then also, just to round it out real quick, I had found something to end on a good note. Is a video I found of some objective beauty in the world, and it does raise some questions as well, so kind of a callback. You can't tell me all of these beautiful things aren't beautiful. And I find it interesting now that we are surrounded by block buildings just everywhere, just concrete and glass. That's it.
Yep.
It's psychologically damaging. And that's how you get people saying things like objective beauty doesn't exist. Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Great point.
So, thank you so much for joining me again, John. Let everyone know where they can find you, what you have going on, and what more they can consume.
Awesome. Yeah, you can find us on Wake Up or Else on YouTube. My website's wakeuporelse.com, and the book is available in paperback and audio or ebook. It's everywhere. It's on Amazon, but it's on about 50 different platforms. So, pick up a copy. It'll really help you in your journey. It's just it's a guidebook. Intellectual, spiritual, and mental or emotional validation, tips, just all kinds of stuff that will just make you laugh and cry. It's awesome.
Yeah, he sent me a copy. I've read through it, and it is phenomenal. And I got to say, the title caught my attention. It was interesting because it's the survival guide's never for what you wrote about, and I just thought it was such a cool concept that it's unique, and you're never going to find another book out there like it. So I highly recommend getting yourself a copy. Other than that, thank you so much for joining both of us on another episode of Rise to Liberty podcast. So I do have some shows coming up. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, we do have Brandon Joe Williams coming. I believe he's going to be here on the 3rd of March. Just keep an eye out for it. It's going to be a discussion of all state nationalism, how to get out of this system. Of course, we can diagnose things, we can all day, all week, and we do. But what are we going to do about it? We've got to try something, and this is an option. You can also find some resources for the state nationalism on John's site, wakeuporelse.com. And other than that, risetoliberty.com. And until next time, stay free, my friends.
Awesome, Jacob. Appreciate it. Bye, guys.